So the theme for this weekend is awakening the kind heart. I saw this photo in volume 5 of Venerables books that Venerable is working on, the Dalai Lama and herself. Volume 5 is called In Praise of Great Compassion. It's a beautiful book. It's a must read. It's all about how to develop compassion and love and bodhicitta, and it draws from many different traditions, not just the Tibetan tradition, but the Pali tradition, the Chinese tradition. It's full of juicy material to enhance our compassion and love. So this photo is kind of right at the beginning of the book, and I managed to get a copy of it for the slides here. And yeah, it's just so beautiful. The Dalai Lama with this elderly, she looks like a Tibetan woman, just showing so much kindness and love. And this quotation, "My religion is kindness," is probably one of the most well-known and often quoted statements of the Dalai Lama. So in his life, he has met with so many different kinds of people from different faiths, all the different world religions, and including the leaders of those religions as well as practitioners. He's also met with politicians and scientists and educators, students, and all kinds of ordinary people. And he always shows genuine respect for all of these people, never tries to convert anybody to Buddhism, even though he's, a Buddhist leader, highly revered in the Buddhist world. But he's not at all into converting people to Buddhism. Instead, he expresses, genuine respect for all the different religions of the world and encourages people to stay within their own religion rather than converting to Buddhism, which is kind of, when I first heard that, I was like, huh? You mean I wasn't supposed to become a Buddhist? I was supposed to be a Catholic? But then he goes on to say, but if you're not satisfied with the religion you were brought up in, then it's okay to switch. But anyway, the point is, he's not at all trying to push Buddhism on anybody. And very often he says, my religion is very simple. My religion is kindness. Because he recognizes that this is kind of one of the universal values of humanity. All human beings, no matter what religion they follow, and even those who don't follow any religion, because there's a lot of people who aren't in religion at all. But kindness is something universal. Everybody appreciates kindness. So one of his missions in life is to promote kindness, to spread kindness, to preach, you might say, preach kindness. Yeah, because it's something everybody does appreciate. And it brings benefit to everybody. It brings benefit to others, of course, but also to oneself. And so this is what we'll be focusing on this weekend, is how to have more kindness, how to overcome obstacles there may be to having kindness, showing kindness. We have all experienced it in our lives. We must have received kindness from our parents or whoever was our caregivers, because it's said that if a baby, a baby, of course, needs food and warmth and physical comfort and medical needs and so on and so forth. But a baby needs more than just these physical needs. A baby needs love and affection. And if a baby doesn't receive that, apparently the brain won't develop properly. It won't be able to develop as a properly functioning human being. And you might even not live at all. You might not survive. So the fact that we are here, we are alive and functioning reasonably well, is proof that we did receive kindness. We receive love and affection and care from some people in our lives, even if not everybody showed us kindness, but some people must have shown us kindness. So, I think we've all received it from family members, and also teachers and mentors and friends, and lots of people throughout our life, even strangers. And also we've probably been taught to be kind. It's a very important value in Western culture, probably because of the Christian influence. But yeah, I'm sure we can remember our mothers and our fathers and grandparents teaching us to be kind. Don't be mean, don't be nasty, be kind. And also teachers in school and so on. So we have experienced it, and we have also been taught to be kind. And we do have, kindness is a quality that we do all have. And so, many times we are able to show kindness in our interactions with others, but not always. Sometimes we're not able to be kind. Sometimes we're even unkind. So I thought to start by looking at that, like what stops us from being kind? And so I came up with a list. This is the next slide. Just based on my own experience, my own thoughts, my own, and things I've heard from other people. So I'll go through this list first, and then, if anyone has something to add, we can make a really long list of what stops us from being kind. So I think one cause is when we are suffering, right? When we are going through some kind of physical or mental suffering. So like physical pain, when we're in pain, when we're uncomfortable, when we're hungry, cold, whatever, okay? We're having physical discomfort. So at such times, then we're very much focused on our own suffering and the desire to get away from this suffering, to find relief from this suffering. So in those moments, then it's hard to think about others, pay attention to others, be aware of others' needs, and show them kindness. If they need help, we're like, I'm the one who needs help. And so we may not be able to show kindness at those moments. And we might even act in ways showing irritation, frustration. We might even hurt people. And the same can happen with mental suffering. So if we're going through mental suffering, grief, frustration, depression, disappointment, there's all different kinds of mental sufferings that can happen to us as well. And so when we're preoccupied with those experiences of suffering, then again, it's difficult to be attentive to others and kind to others. But actually, there's kind of a practical way of dealing with this. I've learned this from the Tibetan tradition, and I use it myself. Not always, but when I do use it, it's very effective. And that is when going through some kind of suffering yourself, whether it's physical or mental or both, to remind yourself that you're not the only person in the world who is suffering, that there's lots of other people who are suffering as well. And this is super effective for a number of reasons. So one is it takes your attention away from from me. Because what happens is when we're suffering, then naturally our mind focuses on that and keeps thinking about it again and again, gets obsessed with it. And that process actually seems to enlarge the suffering. It seems to grow, like blowing air into a balloon. It becomes really huge. And then it can seem like, oh, I can't bear this. It's unbearable. It's overwhelming, and I can't manage it. It's terrible. So these kind of thoughts are going. I don't think we do this deliberately. I think it's just an automatic thing. But it's helpful to recognize that that's happening. And so, yeah, the suffering can seem really huge, enormous, much worse than it is. So when we think about other people and the suffering they're going through, we will probably be able to recognize some people's suffering is worse than ours, right? What some people are going through, even right at the same time we're suffering. There are other people who have worse suffering, bigger suffering, greater suffering, like right now, the people of Ukraine. Very easy to think about that. You know, people whose homes have been destroyed, they're refugees sleeping in a big gym or factory, not knowing where they're going to go, families broken up. If we compare our suffering with the suffering of those people, then it's probably clear that our suffering isn't that bad. And so, yeah, so then that awareness can help us see that our suffering isn't so bad. So then it kind of shrinks. It becomes, this expression, making a mountain out of a molehill. So thinking of other suffering helps that mountain again seem like a molehill rather than a huge overwhelming mountain. And when that awareness comes into our mind, then we can also feel, oh, this suffering isn't so bad. It's manageable. Other people can manage their suffering. I should be able to manage this one too. Yeah. So that that's kind of an immediate effect of thinking about other people's suffering. And then, from the Buddhist point of view, it's also very effective to open up our heart and feel compassion for those other people. It's like, oh, I'm suffering and they're suffering. I understand at least a little bit of what they're going through. Yeah. And so that really expands our open-heartedness and our compassion, and may also give rise to the wish to help them, to do something to help those other people. And then there are other practices one can do, like Tonglen. I'll talk about that later. That's a really wonderful practice to do to relieve the suffering of others. But anyway, that's a very helpful technique. I used it just the other day because I was experiencing some suffering. I was preoccupied with that for a little while, but then I thought about what other people are going through at this very moment, like Ukrainians and also other people who had dreams that were shattered. Like I thought of one story I heard of a couple who I can't remember if it was on the day they got married or right shortly afterwards when they were having their honeymoon. They had a friend who flew jets, and I guess the jet had an extra seat in it. So they got permission for each of them to go up in this jet with their friend. And when it was the wife's turn, so she was in the jet with the friend, and the husband was down on the ground watching, the jet crashed. I mean, can you imagine that? His suffering. I mean, all the dreams they must have had of their life together, their love for each other, and so on, just totally crashed. So things like that happen. I've heard of other stories as well of people who just before they were married or when they were married or right after they were married, one of them dying in an accident or of an illness or something. So, yeah, lots of stories of just awful things that happen to people, shattering their dreams. So, thinking about that, then I thought, oh, this isn't so bad at all. I can manage this. I can survive this. I still have my body. I still have my eyes. I can see. I have all my limbs. I can walk. I can do things. So many terrible things happen to people. So, yeah. So looking at, comparing your suffering with the suffering of others, you'll probably recognize that it isn't that bad. And that is very, very helpful. And then it helps to open your heart and be able to show kindness to others instead of just being focused on me and my suffering and being miserable and grumpy and all of those kind of things. Okay, so the second one that I thought of is fear, anxiety, and this could take different forms. A few that I thought of would be, we might see somebody who appears to be in need, and we may feel the impulse to help that person, to reach out to that person, but we may be hindered by a fear. Like, for example, oh, how will they react? Will they accept my offer of help, or will they get mad at me? That does sometimes happen. I can't remember if it's ever happened to me, but I've heard stories of it. You try to help somebody and they, leave me alone, go away, I don't need help. So it can be quite unpleasant. So anyway, the fear of that happening could hinder us from reaching out. Or we might be afraid of doing the wrong thing, making a mistake. So all kinds of things might come up in our mind that would stop us from showing kindness to that person. Another one might be, what will other people think? Yeah, if people see me showing kindness to this person, we might think, oh, they might ridicule me, they may make fun of me. It's not cool to show kindness. I don't know if that's the case or not, because I remember once meeting a teacher, a high school teacher, who told me that among his students, it was considered cool to be mean and nasty and angry. And I mean, that was many years ago, and I don't know if it's still the case now, but I was really shocked, having spent so many years around Tibetan lamas and, the emphasis on kindness and friendliness and compassion, that, oh, really? It's cool to be angry and mean and nasty? So anyway, if you do hang around with people who have that kind of mentality, then you might be concerned, oh, if I act in a kind and gentle way, what will they think of me? Yeah, so those are just a few possible fears that might come up in our mind that would inhibit our show of kindness. And then the third one is busy or stressed. If you have a huge workload, you're really, really busy, you have so many things to do, and probably stressed as well because you may have a time limit on having, to finish these things. So again, in that situation, it can be difficult to think about others in need and stop and consider, oh, what do they need? How can I help them, and so on, or even just to be friendly and kind. And number 4 is probably the biggest problem, anger. And so, I mean, of course, this is probably what will arise in our mind with respect to somebody who's been hurtful to us, who's behaved in an unkind, unfriendly, or even hurtful, nasty way to us. Then what comes up in our mind is, well, if you're going to be like that to me, then I'm going to be like that to you, and feel totally justified in, showing the same kind of manner to the other person. Or even if they're not that way to us, if they're that way to other people, if we see them being mean and nasty to other people, then we may feel, well, they don't deserve to be treated kindly. They're not like that themselves. So these kind of thoughts might arise in our mind. But it's good to check, to stop and check that. Like, okay, if we follow those kinds of thoughts and feelings and attitudes, where will that get us? Is that really the road we want to go down? Do we want to be like that ourselves? I really love this expression or this saying of Michelle Obama. I think it's what I remember is, when they go low, you go high. So that was advice that she gave to kids, I guess. Being a mother, she knows very well. Hard to do, but if you think about it, if you can do that, don't go low. If somebody else is going low and being mean and nasty and behaving horribly, what good is it for you to be that way yourself? Is that really where you want to be, how you want to be, and what will be the long-term result of that? Will you feel good about yourself? Will that bring benefit to anybody? On the other hand, if we can stay above that kind of behavior and continue having respect and kindness, consideration for others, even if they are not like that themselves, we'll feel much better ourselves. And I think there's a greater chance of influencing others as well. We're showing a way of being that maybe that person hasn't experienced much in their life. And they might be like astonished. Oh, you're like that? You can be like that? And it sends a signal, a message that maybe it will take time, but eventually it could turn that person around. I read a wonderful article about a man, I don't remember his name, but Michael something. It was in a Buddhist magazine, and he wrote a book called From Hate to Love. And his story was that he was a white supremacist, neo-Nazi type person. Oh, he started off being a bully. That's right. When he was a kid, he started bullying other kids, and he liked the feeling. It gave him an adrenaline rush. So it really made him feel good to bully other kids and get other kids get scared. So he started behaving like that. And then when he became a teenager, he got into these hate groups and a hate band. He even started a hate band that played hate music, and they were racist, and I mean just all kinds of awful stuff. And they got into fights, and some of his friends got killed and ended up in jail, and he was just living a really awful life, full of hatred, all about hatred. And then, fortunately, he turned around. When he was in his 20s, he got married and had a child. And looking at his little child, a little girl, he thought, if I keep going like this, I'm either going to end up dead or in prison. And what will happen to her? So that was a turning point for him, thinking about his child and loving his child. And then later, when his little girl was older, he found her reading a Dalai Lama book. And then, what's that? So he started reading it too. And that, connected him with Buddhism, and eventually he got into a Buddhist group, practiced Buddhist meditation, and he just totally, like 180 degrees, became completely different. But in this article, he said there were times when he was in this hate mode, this hate way of being. There were people who showed him kindness. And one example was he was in a McDonald's, and at the counter, the cashier was a black woman, and he had a swastika tattooed on his middle finger, so he could, really offend people. I guess he enjoyed that. And she saw that, and she looked at him and she said, "I know you're better than that." And he was like, oh, he just ran out of there. He didn't know what to do with that. And I think there was another case of a boss of his who was Jewish and treated him with kindness. So these are things that left imprints on his mind, these acts of kindness, even towards people who were among the groups of people that he hated and that he was railing against and, writing lyrics for hate songs against. And so they left imprints on his mind. And then probably those, plus the other things as well, his daughter's interest in the Dalai Lama, eventually got him to change. So I thought that story was just amazing. And it just shows, we just never know. Even this person who seems so incorrigible and unchangeable, they're going to be like that forever, just horrible and mean and nasty, that they could change. And if we can show them kindness, then there's a greater chance of turning them around. And that's actually something he said. He said when, he would often get hatred because there were other groups of people who were against the neo-Nazis and so on. And so he said that kind of thing just fed their hatred. That's what they liked. They liked provoking anger and hatred and nastiness. They like provoking fights. So being met with anger and hatred by other people would just feed their own. So that really makes it clear that that approach is not at all effective. If you want people to be more kind, you've got to be kind to them, not be angry and mean and nasty to them. But this is a huge job, working on anger, and also there's different degrees of anger. There's milder forms of anger, like just dislike and irritation and annoyance and frustration. So even these mild levels of anger, they're still problematic. They can still interfere with kindness. And so we do need to watch out for them and find ways of working for them, on them, sorry. And Venerable, as you know, has written a whole book about how to work with anger. So if that's something you feel interested in, feel the need for, then that's a good resource. There's actually several books about anger. Healing Anger by the Dalai Lama. Thich Nhat Hanh has a book about anger. There's lots of resources on how to work with anger. So, yeah, that's a big one. And then the next one is arrogance. So this is when we feel superior to anyone, any other person, any other being. It could be because of our knowledge, our social background, our level of wealth, our education, our physical looks, whatever. We can have all kinds of reasons for feeling better than other people. But when we have that kind of attitude, we're looking, feeling up, looking down on others, then that can interfere with our kindness, because we may feel, oh, it's beneath me to associate with such a person, to show attention to such a person. What would other people think of me? What would my peers think of me, and so on. So that can be subtle. Yeah. So look out for that. That's also something that can, anytime we find it difficult to show kindness, it's good to look into our mind and explore what's going on there. What are the factors in my mind that are interfering with my kindness? So this is one. The next one is self-centeredness. So this is something we all have, preoccupation with ourselves. So it's kind of similar to the first one. It causes us to be focused on me and my needs and my wishes and so on. But I added attachment to this because self-centeredness, self-preoccupation also lies behind a lot of our ambitions and our desires. Okay, so I want to get ahead. I want to become wealthy. I want to have a lot of stuff. I want to climb the social ladder or the corporate ladder. I want to be famous and so on. So the things we desire, aspire for, have ambition for, often are related to just me. Our number one object of concern in the whole world, the whole universe. And so if we're overly attached to ourself and our ego and our drives and our ambitions and so on, so this can lead us to be unkind to people, to push people out of the way so that we can get what we want, and even do harmful things to them, or just not have any time, not find the time to help them. So the next one I put down was mistaken concepts about kindness and altruism. So I thought of this because I was reading, some years ago, I was reading the book called The Art of Happiness, which is a collaboration, well, it's actually written by Howard Cutler, a psychologist, in collaboration with the Dalai Lama. So he asked a lot of questions, had discussions with the Dalai Lama on different topics that are kind of juicy topics in the Western world. And and in that book, he said that until recently, in the West, the Western world, science, philosophy, psychology, and so on, there was this pretty predominant belief that human beings were basically aggressive, greedy, competitive, selfish. This is our nature. This is how we are. And even when people do altruistic acts to others, it's only because they're going to get something for themselves. So it's a pretty dim view of human nature. And so you may have been exposed to this in your education, or maybe in your family, or maybe your father, your parents believed in that, your teachers believed in that. So you may have been educated to believe that as well. And as a result of that, you might be kind of cynical about things like kindness and altruism, and wouldn't value those qualities. Yeah. Or you might even think, oh, it's stupid. You know, when people are kind, they're just being stupid. I don't want to be like that. I want to be intelligent, smart, aggressive. Something like that. Anyway, those are just some things that I thought of. And so if you don't value kindness, you don't even believe in kindness, then you wouldn't make an effort to be that way or to cultivate it. So according to Buddhism, of course, Buddhism does acknowledge that human beings have a lot of afflictive emotions. We do have anger and greed and selfishness and so on. But these are not permanent parts of ourself. They are just temporary, transitory, and they can be eliminated. They're not like set in concrete in our mind, but they are impermanent, changeable, and it is possible to be free of them, even eliminate them completely from our mind so that they will never arise again. This is what the Buddha did. He discovered it is possible. You can do it. I did it. You can do it too. And lots of other people have done it. So it's possible to be free of these negative emotions. And we do have within us natural qualities: love, compassion, kindness. These are part of our nature. They are ingrained, inborn, innate qualities. They're actually part of our Buddha nature, our potential to reach enlightenment. Every living being, not just humans, animals have them too. You can see animals showing kindness, at least to their offspring. And then Howard Cutler said that in recent years, there's been a change, a shift in the Western world. There's greater acceptance of this positive side of human nature. And there's been experiments done. For example, they do experiments on very young children, 6 months old, 1 year old, to see if they do have kindness, they do have compassion, and they find they do. Most children do have a natural, not being taught, not being told, this is what you should do, this is how you should do it, but just natural, instinctive, intuitive show of kindness. And I found an article by Tara Brach, who's a psychologist as well as a meditation teacher and an author of some really excellent books. And in that, she says, our physiology has the ingredients that allow us to awaken our kindness. So if you're into brain science, the frontal cortex has the structures to feel empathy, compassion, and bonding. We have the mirror neurons that help us have that feeling of, I understand where you are. We have the chemical oxytocin that enables us to feel our connection with others. So physiologically, okay, they have found evidence in our body, in our brain, that we are wired to be kind. So I think it's just fantastic that in the West, at least some scientists and researchers have taken an interest in this, and they're, studying it and writing articles about it, and it seems to be growing a lot more material about this. And there's this, what is it called? The Greater Good Science Center, located in Berkeley. If you, yeah, they have a website, and they offer a lot of, well, they have all the newest research on this kind of thing, how to have more kindness and goodness and compassion. So if you do have any doubt, if you're still, have some lingering doubt from what you've learned about the negative side of human beings, then it's good to look into that. So I left the last bullet point with just some, oh, please go back. Go back. Yeah. If any of you have other ideas or experiences of things that make it difficult to be kind, things that I haven't covered here.
You mentioned people who are not met with anger in return. When they're angry, they may be shocked. So it's also being around other people who exhibit a lot of anger. So sort of that, societal conditioning or family conditioning.
Influence of others. Yeah. Good one. Yeah, we are very, very much affected by the people we spend time with, family, friends, and so on. So, yeah, if we're around nasty people who are nasty and unkind, then we'll be like that too. I actually have that on the next slide of how to be more kind, is to associate with kind people.
I know that for myself, that if I have any kind of grudge holding, unable to forgive something from the past, so it's not just anybody, but specific people, that hard feelings, grudge holding, inability to forgive keeps me out of the kindness circle.
Yeah, not forgiving.
People who have suffered trauma.
So
may have PTSD or effects of that trauma.
Yeah, I kind of thought of
kind
that.
Of a mental illness.
Yeah, I thought of that in number 2, anxiety. That could be. Yeah, if you've been harmed by even one person, even if one person has harmed you, then that can make you afraid of everybody. Anybody, you might think, is this person going to hurt me too? So.
But people who, like even Ukraine, I would think they would not be able to show kindness right now, or.
They're traumatized. Yeah. So trauma and PTSD, sorry. Where did that come from? Well, that could be a factor too. Maybe that comes under arrogance. Okay, so if you think of other things, we can add more later. So there are quite a few factors that could interfere with us being kind, make it hard for us to be kind. Although not all of them would affect everybody. You might only have 1 or 2 of these, and you probably wouldn't have them all the time either. Maybe only occasionally these might come up and interfere with the kindness. So what Buddhism says, as I mentioned before, is that things like anger and arrogance and fear and anxiety, all these afflictive emotions in our mind are not permanent parts of us. It's really, really, really helpful to recognize that, because I think sometimes people do think, well, that's just how I am, and I've always been that way, I always will be that way, I cannot change. So Buddhism says, no, you can change, because these things are not permanent. And if we learn to be more attentive to our experiences, have more mindfulness, we'll notice that ourselves. We'll notice that, yeah, sometimes I'm too angry to be kind, or too scared to be kind, or whatever. But there are other times when I don't feel that way. I let down my defenses. and or my heart is open and I can be kind. So if you can look at your own experience, you can probably recognize sometimes it's hard to be kind, other times it isn't. So that gives you an opening, that, oh, I can sometimes be kind. So if I can just work on these other factors that prevent that and reduce those factors, then I can be kind more often, more of the time. And even a really angry person may have times when they're peaceful and be able to show kindness. Um, another story I read, it was an inmate writing about an experience that he had. There was another inmate in the prison where he was that he didn't like at all because that guy was just like a really mean and nasty, a bully. He even had a tattoo on his arm saying thug. And so that's how he thought of him. He's a thug. And that's the way he behaved most of the time. So the inmate writing the story said he didn't like that person and he stayed away from him. And then one day he saw that very person, the thug, pushing another inmate in a wheelchair. So there was this inmate who was elderly or weak or disabled or whatever, really having a hard time and sitting in the wheelchair. And the thug was pushing him and showing him a lot of kindness and attentiveness. And the inmate telling the story was just astonished. He just never thought and never believed that this person could behave that way. And in a prison, it's also not easy to be kind. I think the ethic, the way to be is to be tough and mean, otherwise you might get attacked if you show softness and gentleness. So he said that was such a lesson for him to not have these fixed ideas, these fixed concepts about other people. And also a lesson that everybody, even the meanest, nastiest thug, does have kindness in them. Everyone is capable of kindness. Okay, so the next slide. These are some things I thought of to help us have more kindness, to work on reducing the factors that prevent us from having kindness and increase our familiarity with kindness. So first is mindfulness and introspective awareness. So that sounds pretty technical if you're not familiar with Buddhist language, but although mindfulness is a really popular thing nowadays, so I'm sure you've heard of that. So mindfulness has different meanings. One meaning is simply being in the present, paying attention to what is going on right now. And that can include what we're doing with our body, what we're doing with our mouth, what we're saying, and mainly what we're doing with our mind. That's harder, it's more subtle. But gradually, we can learn to pay more attention to our mind, to our thoughts, to our feelings. So mindfulness, then, in this meaning, is just paying attention rather than being distracted. Our body and our mind are here and our mind is somewhere else, way far away in the distant past or the fantasized future or some other part of the world. So that's not mindfulness. So mindfulness is being here with our body and mind and paying attention to what's going on, noticing what's going on. And then the second one, introspective awareness, is the ability to detect if there are unskillful, unwholesome factors going on in our mind or behavior, like if maybe we're doing something that's unkind, unconsiderate, causing problems for others. So just being able to notice that, being able to recognize that. Because often, we might do things that do hurt others or upset others and we don't even realize it. And we may not have the intention, but we're just partly because of mindfulness, we're not being mindful, we're not being attentive. And also not having this quality of thinking of others, being considerate of others. So we can do things that do annoy or upset or hurt others, but not realize it. So introspective alertness or awareness is, we do have this as a natural quality. We have both of these, mindfulness and introspective awareness. They are qualities that are already present in us, and we just need to cultivate them more. We need to build them up so that they're there more often. And so gradually over time, we can become more attentive to our own body and mind and speech and so on, and more aware of what things are not helpful, what things may be unkind or negative or unethical. I mean, like when we're driving, most of us drive. So when we're driving, we have to have both of these qualities. Otherwise, we could get into an accident. So we have to be mindful about how we're driving, the speed we're driving at, whether we're in the lane we're supposed to be in or on the opposite side of the road. So we do have to pay very close attention to what we're doing moment by moment, as well as, looking in the front of us, looking in the rear view mirror, the side mirrors, knowing what other cars may be around us or pedestrians or whatever. So, so that's like mindfulness while we're driving. And then introspective awareness is just being able to recognize if we're doing something that isn't correct, like if we're driving too fast over the speed limit or falling asleep at the wheel or whatever, dangerous behavior or ways of thinking that could lead to accidents. So we do have these already. We just need to have them more often. The second one is learning how to counteract the afflictions that interfere with kindness. So this is a huge topic. We don't have time this weekend to go into it, but it's there for you to explore. So I already mentioned that, if you have a problem with anger, irritation, grudge holding, and so on, then I recommend Venerable's book, Working with Anger. It's full of methods for dealing with those kinds of problems. But understand that it takes time. When it comes to our mental afflictions, Buddhism says they've been in our mind forever. They didn't just start at a certain point in this lifetime. We brought them with us from past lives, and those go way back without beginning. So our minds are very, very, very familiar with, even addicted to, we could say, these afflictive emotions. So not to discourage you, but just to know that it's not something we can do quickly and easily. I had to learn this lesson myself when I first started learning Buddhism. I was pretty young. I was 20, 21. I was so enthusiastic, so eager. Yes, anger is bad. Attachment is bad. I'm going to stop being that way. And after, a little while, I was so upset. I still have anger. I still have attachment. What's wrong with me? I really love Venerable Chinny's talk the other day. I needed to learn humility. Yeah. So so we do need to work on these. We do need to apply the antidotes and work on them, but not with high unrealistic expectations that just like that they're going to go away. We're going to stop being that way. In fact, the lamas used to say, slowly, slowly, you're not like a mushroom. Mushrooms, I think overnight, a mushroom grows. So, yeah, we're more like I don't know what would be an appropriate analogy, but something that grows very, very, very slowly. So it does take time. Yeah, so there's remedies to all the afflictive emotions. And it's also helpful just to pay attention to our own experience and observe when I get angry and I act in an angry way, what are the effects? What are the results? And then, is that really how I want to be? Is that really how I want to feel? So just see for ourselves how these affect us and our life and our relationships with others. So doing that slowly over time, hopefully you'll come to recognize that these are painful. These are toxic. They're actually toxic. And then you just want to avoid them. Just like when we see a bottle with the skull and crossbones on it, you know, we just kind of automatically know, oh, be careful, don't touch that, don't get that on your hands, don't put it in your mouth. So similarly, you know, when we come to recognize that afflictive emotions are afflictive and toxic and harmful, then when we do notice them arising in our mind, we'll be able to say, nope, that's not the way I want to be. That's not the road I want to go down. And find some solution, some remedy to that. But when working with our afflictions, it's very, very important to be kind to ourselves. Because many people, including myself, I can talk from experience, have the tendency to beat themselves up, to feel bad, to feel ashamed. I'm such a bad Buddhist, I'm such a bad nun. Engage in all this sort of self-critical way of thinking. So be on the lookout for that. Notice if that is something happening in you. And if you do notice it, stay away from it. That's another skull and crossbones. Because that's just still harmful afflictions. It's just anger, criticalness, but directed at yourself rather than at others. And so it's still something harmful, something we need to avoid. So when we talk about developing kindness and being kind, we have to include ourselves in that as well. Sometimes I find myself, I just find these negative thoughts in my mind, self-critical thoughts, and I ask myself, now would I talk to somebody else like that? No way! So why do I do it to myself? I mean, it's habit, but I found that really helpful to realize that I wouldn't dare talk to anyone else like that or even indulge in those kind of thoughts. I would feel too ashamed. So if I wouldn't treat other people that way, why should I treat myself that way? Okay, number 3, read or listen to teachings on kindness. So make yourself familiar with information on how to be more kind and compassionate and so on. There's tons of material out there, Dalai Lama books, Venerable Children books, Lama Zopa Rinpoche books, lots of books and online courses and podcasts and so on and so forth. And it doesn't necessarily have to be Buddhist. It could be other religions or even secular teachers who are teaching how to have more kindness. Whatever works, whatever will help you to increase feelings of kindness. So this is a much better way to use our time rather than reading murder mysteries or manuals on how to build bombs or guns. I mean, people do that. I know I'm probably nobody here, but I'm kind of amazed that people have that kind of interest. So we do have choices over how we spend our time, where we put our energy, where we put our attention. So just try to make wise choices. And then next one, associate with kind people. So that's what we already talked about before, that we are easily influenced by others. So it's good to try to spend more time with people who are kind, who show kindness. And that's probably why a lot of people like to come to the Abbey, because there's so much kindness here. I mean, we try our best, but I think we do pretty well. And every morning there's this verse that we recite about offering service And it includes words like, using our body and speech to support the values we deeply believe in: generosity, kindness, ethical conduct, love, and compassion. So we remind ourselves every day to keep those qualities in our mind and our actions, our behavior as much as possible. And so you're living with a group of people who are trying to do that, who are really trying to be kind. It kind of helps, it makes it easier. So I think there are kind people everywhere. Even there's maybe some not very nice people around, but there are kind people there. And so try to find those people and hang around them more, and not hang around the not nice people so much, because we are influenced. We have within ourselves, we have the seeds for all kinds of attitudes and ways of behaving, because we did it all before in this life and in past life. So we have seeds of all those past ways of behaving. So we have seeds of kindness and compassion and generosity, but we also have seeds of anger and vengeance and grudge holding and nastiness and so on and so forth. So we have those seeds within us. And then being around people who are behaving in one way or in another is like a trigger that can trigger off those seeds, or pour water on those seeds in ourselves. And then we find ourselves sometimes quite shockingly, you find kinds of thoughts or impulses coming up in your mind, and you think, where did that come from? Maybe that person made me that way. They forced me to be this way. Some people might think that way, but it's not like that. They're behaving that way, but their behavior is like a trigger, like water nourishing the seeds that we already have in our mind. So don't blame the other person. Blame your past life. You were like that too once upon a time, or maybe even in this life. So we have those seeds. So we really have to be careful about which seeds we water, right? Do we want to water the poisonous seeds, or do we want to water the positive seeds, the good seeds? So we can't always avoid unkind people or nasty people. But even then, even those kind of people, if we really cultivate our own qualities of kindness and compassion, then we may get to the point where we can show kindness even to those people. So even if someone is coming at us, with aggressiveness or nastiness or impatience or whatever, if we can stay cool and calm and stay high, as Michelle Obama says, and maintain our kindness towards them, there's a greater chance that they will calm down. I remember this story I heard about this woman. This woman told me this story. She was working for a company, and her job was to answer the phone when clients called up. And when they called, they were often angry because they had having some problem, and they're calling up to complain or to get help with their problem. And she said when she heard the voice of this person, and she could hear anger in their voice, it would trigger her own anger. So she'd be angry, and they would be talking to each other in an angry way, which wasn't very satisfying at all and not very helpful. So after learning the meditation on loving kindness, which we're going to do next, which is just saying, may you be happy to whoever is around, whoever you think of. Then she started doing that. So when she heard the angry tone of voice of the other person, she would just go into thinking, may you be happy, may you be happy, may you be happy. And the effect it had on her was to keep her mind calm. She was able to stay calm rather than getting angry and annoyed. And she noticed that if she could stay calm and not angry and annoyed, the other person would calm down too. Their voice would, and then they were able to have a nice conversation rather than an angry one. So that shows that, yeah, if we can maintain, even if there might be anger starting to come up, but if we can, you know, cover it over with at least an attempt to be kind, then it can be helpful. Sometimes you may say those words, may you be happy, and you don't really mean it. You're just trying to feel that way, but it's still better than letting yourself explode. Sorry. Like I just did. Yeah, it is a tool. It's like an effective tool that can help you to stay calm, and then probably the anger will subside, will go away, and you might even be able to feel genuine kindness for the other person. Okay, the next one is make wise choices about media and entertainment. So, again, we're very easily affected by things coming in from the outside, including, I mentioned already, people we associate with, but also information we take in. Things that we read, books that we read, newspapers. I don't know if anybody reads newspapers anymore, but anyway, news sources, internet or social media or whatever, TV, movies, music. Yeah, so there's so many sources of information that we can take in. And there's choices. We do have choices. And so some of those sources of information or entertainment could increase our anger and other afflictive emotions, our fear, anxiety, despair, and so on and so forth. And if you notice that happening, if you notice that paying attention to that news source or watching that kind of movie or listening to that kind of music increases afflictive emotions and makes it harder for you to feel calm and positive and have kindness and compassion, then reduce or maybe stop paying attention to that source. And then there's other sources that increase kindness, So if you're into watching movies and TV programs, choose those that show people being kind to each other, kind and compassionate. And there must be some, we don't watch TV and movies here, so I don't know, but there are such films and programs. So choose those. And then for news, there are websites and news sources that are devoted to that, like goodnews.org or whatever. What is it? Good News Network. Yeah, so it's full of all these beautiful stories, uplifting, showing people kind to each other, animals who are kind to each other, and so on and so forth. That's really sweet, really nice. So, yeah. So try to make wise choices about that. Yeah, so reading and hearing stories of kindness, acts of kindness, will inspire you to be more kind yourself, show you what's possible, what's doable. The last one is meditate on loving kindness. And so within Buddhism, there are a number of different practices, meditations to help us have more kindness. We'll do a few in this weekend, and there are others as well we don't have time for here, but you can learn about them. And like the book I mentioned, Volume 5, In Praise of Great Compassion, full of, you spend your whole life, the rest of your life, reading that book and reflecting on these different ways of having more kindness. So, learning to be more kind is a bit like going to the gym. If maybe in the beginning your muscles are kind of weak and flabby, and you start going to the gym and working out, and in the beginning you can't do very much, but you keep going regularly and doing the same whatever exercises or weightlifting or whatever. I don't go to the gym, but well, we have a little gym here, actually, but I don't know how to use all those machines. But anyway, you work out, and gradually your muscles get stronger, more developed. You're able to do more, lift heavier weights, and so on and so forth. So you do get stronger. So kindness is a bit like a mental muscle, an emotional muscle, a spiritual muscle. In the beginning, it may be kind of weak and flabby. But if we work on building it up, practicing it, and doing meditations, on a regular basis, then that muscle will get stronger and firmer, and we'll find that our kindness is increasing, and it becomes more and more natural way of being. So that's the real purpose of meditation. Meditation is to make ourselves familiar with positive states of mind, positive ways of being, of living our lives. And the more we do it, the more those become our normal way of being, our default mode. And meditation, some people might be a bit scared of meditation because you might think, oh, I have to sit for such a long time and I can't move and it's so difficult. My mind is all over the place. But it doesn't have to be a long time. It can just be a few minutes, even just a few minutes. Lama Yeshe used to say that. He said, even 5 minutes of meditation is good. Yeah, it will bring about changes. And you can find different ways of sitting or walking or standing or lying down. It doesn't have to be like, full lotus posture with your back straight, not moving. Yeah, so there's moving meditation. And also in our daily life, when we're walking around or going around seeing people, seeing animals, then those are times when you can be meditating on loving kindness. Even to just say, oh, may you be happy. I wish you to be happy. What can I do to make you happy? So even just to have those kind of positive thoughts in our daily life with other people and other beings is a way of familiarizing ourselves with this state of mind, with kindness. But in addition to these things, we do also need to recognize whatever inner processes or habitual tendencies we may have that block our kindness and work on those. Because otherwise, if we just try to meditate on loving kindness and try to force ourselves to act in a kind way, but there are these blocks that we're not recognizing, then it may not work. Yeah. And we may end up being discouraged and thinking, this doesn't work, and then even give it up. So we're kind of running out of time. I did have something else I was going to talk about, but I'll leave it till later. This is a meditation, one meditation for cultivating loving kindness. So I'll just briefly mention it now, and then in the next session will be a meditation session, so you can do this meditation then. So it's recommended that we do it with individual people rather than just everybody. May everybody be happy, because that's just so vague, and it's much more powerful to focus on individual people, one person at a time, and look at that person and understand they want to be happy. I want them to be happy too. May they be happy. And it's recommended that we start with people we already have good feelings for. Don't start with those that are really difficult, autocrats and terrorists, rapists. So start with the easy ones, like your family and friends, or puppies and kittens. One teacher recommends starting with puppies and kittens. They're so easy. They're so cute, so adorable, and your heart just completely opens. So bring to mind individuals that you find easy to have good feelings for. And although it is also recommended not to think of someone you have sexual feelings for, because that can get kind of messy and complicated. Those are other kinds of feelings that, yeah, aren't quite the love and kindness that we're trying to develop. So better like family members, friends, puppies and kittens. And yeah, so focus on one person at a time, and then just say to yourself, may you be happy. I wish you to be happy. So feel free to write your own script, to use your own words, to find a way of phrasing it that feels right for you. So this is one suggestion. May you be happy, but you can change that. And then it's also good to think about the things that would make them happy, you know, and imagine giving them those things. Giving the puppy a treat, giving the kitty a treat. Oh, or giving your mother some flowers. Yeah. So imagine giving them something that will make them happy, and then imagine them looking happy, being happy. And or it could just be showing friendliness to them, talking to them. Hey, hi, how are you doing? Great to see you. So showing friendliness and kindness to them, and imagine them looking happy. And then the next point says it's okay if you don't actually feel love. So the point of this kind of practice is to feel genuine loving kindness for the other person. But some people, when they try to do it, don't feel anything. You know, if you're just sitting there on your meditation cushion and imagining this, visualizing this, saying these words to yourself, you may not feel anything. And so some people then feel discouraged, or they think, what's wrong with me? This isn't working. So don't worry about that. If you don't feel the love, it's okay. It's enough just to do this exercise. And slowly, if you keep doing it, and I can say this from experience, slowly over time, the feeling will start to come. You will start to feel it. So don't worry if you don't feel it right away. Then it says after doing this practice with people you already have good feelings for, then you can start to incorporate others, starting with strangers, people you're not so close to, and then eventually the difficult ones. So when you feel ready, yeah, when you feel ready to take on the difficult ones, then you can start doing that. But don't start with the biggest, worst enemy, someone who's created so much suffering for you or for others. Start with people you just find kind of annoying or irritating, kind of low level negative feelings for. We're over time now. But anyway, don't forget yourself. I didn't write that down here, but we also have to have loving kindness for ourselves. So I'll talk about this more later. But this is enough for now. Okay, so we'll stop here.